So the number one problem, I believe the concept in hunting of first sit, best sit. I believe fewer intrusions you have into a big deer's bedroom, the more likely you are to kill him. It's not my idea. I didn't come up with that. Lots of people have taught that for years and years and years. But I believed it. I really did. And the problem was, how do you do that with the gear we had back then? You know, the problem that I set out to solve was making myself more mobile and with good, safe, quiet equipment. And that's the problem that I think we've solved.
Welcome to the Huntxp podcast, episode 16. Dude, we've just got an awesome one for you today. As you can tell, I'm flying solo today. I'm excited because I get to interview Greg Godfrey, which is one of the founders and owners of Tethrd, which has been one of the companies leading the charge in the innovation in the tree saddle, ultra lightweight hunting scene. So if you're a tree saddle hunter, or you've always been curious about tree saddle hunting for whitetails or for elk or any type of game, dude, hang out for this one. We get to sit down with one of the people who's been at the tip of the spear from taking saddle hunting from fringe to a very viable tool in your tool belt. So if you got questions, if you got some skepticism about, man, should I get a tree saddle? Do I really need that? Is it going to be comfortable? Can I actually use it? I'm a little bit bigger. Is it going to work for me? Doesn't it make a bunch of noise? All these questions. We're going to hit on all that stuff today. I'm excited to ask him just about his own personal journey as a hunter. He's got a great story. He's put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears and a lot of effort, and their team has, in making this an option for hunters and opening up a lot of vistas. I know personally, because I've benefited from it. When I was getting back into hunting, I picked up this Phantom saddle, one of their kind of flagship ones from a few years ago. And I learned a ton from these guys. I freaking love my tree saddle. I don't hunt in it every single time, but there is tons of scenarios where it's awesome for me. And I'll even be one, as I've said previously on this podcast, to set up behind an existing tree stand because I'm more comfortable in my tree saddle. I have more options in it. So if you're on the fence, if you've been hunting for a while and you're like, man, I'd like to get a tree saddle because I hunt on a bunch of public property or property that I can't be too invasive in tree setups on, hang out. You're going to learn a ton. And maybe some of your questions that are holding you back are going to get answered today. So don't have much for Crockett News. Just want to let you guys know we got new merch over on the website. We've got some new stuff going on, and we are shifting to turkey season. So we're not going to maybe have as many dedicated turkey episodes, but we're going to bring it up since that's probably where maybe your attention's at this time of year. So even next episode, we've got a hunting public intern. He goes by Curl 4, I think is what they call them. It's going to be awesome. He's dedicated turkey hunter. He did the turkey van tours, that sort of thing. So we're going to ask him a lot of questions about that, what it was like to be a hunting public intern. We got some just great guests coming up. Particularly, we reached out to Minnesota bow hunters and said, hey, who do you want to hear from? And there was fantastic response. We got folks from Whitetail DNA coming, Alex from Whitetail DNA. We've got a guy who helps people get fit for their Western hunt that they just drew a tag for. We've got Steve Porter from Steve Porter Outdoors. We got some awesome guests coming up. So if you're not subscribed yet, if you don't follow us on Spotify, maybe you're listening for the first time. We're Huntxp. We exist to level up each other's hunting game. So we're a community of hunters that's focused on leveling up each other's game. And man, saddle hunting has been a huge level up for me. So stay tuned, check it out. Let's bring Greg on the pod and ask him about saddle hunting. Greg, you're here. Welcome to the Huntxp podcast, man. We're so grateful to have you.
Thanks, man. Thanks for the opportunity. It's good to be here. We've been trying to get this schedule nailed down for a few weeks, and so I'm glad it finally worked out.
We got it. We're here. Let's do this. Why don't you start off? I know people know you through Tethrd, G2 Outdoors, I believe is your channel. And give us the introduction. Who is Greg Godfrey?
Yeah. So I'm Greg Godfrey. I'm the founder and co-owner of Tethrd. We sell saddle hunting equipment. We make hunters lighter, faster, and more efficient. And in my previous life, I was an active duty Army officer. I served 10 years in the Army. Lived all over the country spent some time in Oklahoma and Colorado, upstate New York, Georgia a whole bunch of times, went across the pond a couple of times. So I have a lot of experience kind of all over the country hunting. And that's really where my business came from. Tethrd, it came from kind of being forced to get out of my comfort zone, growing up in the Southeast in Florida, where we hunted pine flats and food plots and box blinds and big ladder stands. And I tried to do that in Colorado when I got stationed at Fort Carson on the Front Range of the Rockies when I was in the 4th Infantry Division there in Colorado Springs. It just didn't work. There were no straight trees. Terrain was like this, not this. And it was just way different. And so I discovered saddle hunting through John Eberhart, who you've had on the podcast. And I found his books, got into saddle hunting, and it kind of took over my life, honestly, from there. And it became an obsession. And now I kind of think about it every day. And it's a blessing and a curse, but yeah, I got a couple of kids, and I live in Savannah, Georgia, and our headquarters is in Tennessee and just south of Nashville. And I'll be relocating to Nashville later this year, or just south of Nashville later this year. And that's what I do, man. That's me. I help run Tethrd, and we have an awesome team, really smart, capable people who are absolute fanatics like me. It's like what we think about all the time. So I'm pretty lucky, and I'm very happy that I get to do what I do.
Yeah. Well, I stumbled across saddle hunting because of a video you did with the hunting public maybe 5-6 years ago. It was so simple. You guys were just in a parking lot, like in a super small oak tree or something like that. And I was just getting back into hunting after college and that sort of thing. And the way you guys broke it down and how it opened things up, I was like, first of all, I could tell you guys we're not just trying to sell something, that this was truly an obsession for you guys. And it was like, I could see the joy on your faces bringing your product that had actually helped you in the field to market. And the other thing I wanted to say before we start off is I've been a part of entrepreneurial things, and it is pretty awesome to witness a business go from take a product from like fringe obscurity into mainstream. And as I've been watching the industry, I've noticed you guys kind of at the forefront of bringing saddle hunting. I mean, now it just seems to be the preference almost. And most guests that we've had on that have been hunting for a big portion of their life now preference saddles. And so what has it been like just to be on that wave of seeing something out of like necessity is the mother of all invention, as you just described from your Colorado experience. But what has it been like being on that wave and pushing that wave in some sense of innovation in a market that's been stuck with hang-on stands, climbers, and box blinds, like you're saying? Was it like people didn't get it right away? Like what have you had to do over the time of Tethrd to bring it to where it's at today, or just saddle hunting to where it is today?
There's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
It's a wild thing to be a part of. I don't know what to call it. I don't want to call it a movement because it makes it sound like more important than it is. It sounds like it actually matters. it's like the grand scheme of things. Like when I
Sure.
think of a
Yeah.
movement, I think of something that like really helps people be better people. And we're just helping people kill deer better. So
Yeah.
I hesitate to call it a movement, but it's been a change. You kind of outlined it, like before 2018, when we turned on our website, saddle hunting, it basically didn't exist. I mean, it was there. It's been around since the 60s, as best I can tell. And, we mentioned John Eberhard earlier. He's been hunting from that type of gear since the 70s, I believe. So, it's been around, but nobody knew about it. The gear wasn't very good. It wasn't accessible. Nobody understood how it worked. It was just, you said it. It was like this fringe, niche thing. And what we did is turn it mainstream, and now it's kind of everywhere. And it is it's humbling, really, when you meet people and they're like, "Oh man, I love your gear," and it's like, really, like our gear, like.
Yeah.
Like it's
Sure.
cool, man. It's cool to be a part of it. And so that's the first part. Is you asked what it was like. It's wild. It's really cool. It's hard to describe to people who haven't been lucky enough to be a part of it. And it's really hard. And I guess the second part of your question was about the entrepreneurial side of it, the business side of it. And
Sure.
man,
Yeah.
I could talk for 10 hours about that. I think a successful entrepreneur, business owner, whatever you want to call it, because at some point I don't know when the transition is, but like you're an entrepreneur, and then at some point
you're
you're
not.
just like you're a business owner, right? I don't know
Right.
where that transition is. I don't know if I've made the transition. I don't know if I'm a business owner or an entrepreneur or both. I guess it doesn't matter. But
Yeah.
I think you have to be like equal parts stupid and confident. Like I was talking about this just the other day to someone, and I told them, if I had known in my blind confidence 7 years ago, in my absolute dogged determination and belief that I could pull Tethrd off, if I had known what it would really take, if I had a crystal ball and could Monday morning quarterback it and look back, I don't know if I would have done it. I don't know if I would have done it, because it's an immense amount of work. It's an immense amount of sacrifice, anxiety, stress. There are good things too, right? Like, I mean, you get your time. I've been my own boss for 7 years, which is awesome. There are financial benefits. There are opportunities that I get to hunt all over. There's really good, awesome stuff that comes with it, but it's hard too. It takes a lot of work, a lot of dedication, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of money, a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety. And, I say that I'm super glad that I wasn't smart enough to know how hard it would be, because I probably wouldn't have done it. But now it's done, and we're here, and we crossed that Rubicon. And I couldn't be prouder of what me and the team have accomplished, because I feel like we have made hunters better. And that's what we want to do. We've helped hunters get lighter and faster and more efficient. And it's been fun. It's been really fun.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm a church planter, so we planted in 6 months before the pandemic. I do a number of things, but I certainly understand the sentiment of like, definitely wouldn't have done that, even given the circumstances.
My dad is a Baptist preacher, and
there you go.
He has planted churches around the country as well, and I understand that. And that is equally, it is just as hard as what I did, just as hard. Maybe harder.
Yeah. In different ways.
In different ways, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have been one of those people who have gotten, I think, faster, lighter, and better. I picked up this is the Phantom, and I've got it kitted out for one sticking is primarily what I do. I think I'm going to probably go away from that this year, but this has been awesome.
What are you going to go to?
Sticks instead of one sticking.
Okay.
The reason for that is noise. So when I'm going into a public land setting, the one stick, like wrapping my legs around the tree, depending on the bark, just creates a ton of noise. And I think the stick method is going to be slower, quieter, less, it's just easier too. I like one sticking for only having to take one stick in and using it as my platform. But I'm going to give sticks a try this year just because I think I've busted a few deer, I know for certain, because I was using the one stick method and hugging the tree and pulling it back up and doing the movements are just noisier. So I want to get quieter. And I think sticks, yours in particular, have gotten to a lightness point where you can pack them in. They're probably not that much heavier than my one stick now to get in.
So I carry four sticks and with aiders on them. And I have been through a similar transition as you. I did the one stick. I like it. I totally do. The reason I quit one sticking was because camera guys. You know, sometimes I hunt with a camera guy and it's not real conducive to hunting with another human being. And what I've kind of settled on is, this might help you, is a hybrid method. So I multi-stick up, but I rappel down. I never climb down. So I still hunt on my safeguard belay device. And at the end of the hunt, it's so safe. It's so fast. You can just really take your time and pack your sticks up as you're going down. It's not as fast as one sticking. But I, like you, think for me, it's better. I like it better. Now, my buddy Carl would challenge you on that, and he is a pro when it comes to one sticking, and he's got it figured out. But for me, I'm with you, JD. I like the multi stick setup, and there's really no weight penalty anymore because our sticks weigh a pound. So you're talking 4 pounds. It's like not that big a deal.
Not that big a deal.
I got way more belly fat than that.
I mean, that's real. Certainly when you get up there and have my brother calls it the trophy of a relaxed life around the midsection, some of those movements. I mean, it's really not that bad.
Did you know that you can use AI to become a better hunter? Here's what you got to do. Our team at Huntxp has built a custom AI. We call it Crockett. And it is the combination of the power of AI and the collective wisdom of hunters for many years mashed up together and put right in your pocket, right in the field, where you can level up your hunting game. You can ask it things like, what's the best broadhead setup for my situation? What's the best day to hunt this week? All sorts of questions. You can take pictures of the snake you almost stepped on in South Dakota and say, is this a rattlesnake? That's something that actually happened to us. It's super fun. Our community's having a great time building this. We'd love for you to join in at huntxp.com. Join us.
I want to go back to the entrepreneurial nature of what you've done with Tethrd. And at a fundamental level, entrepreneurship is solving problems in the world. So what problems did you see? You've alluded to some already. What problems did you see in hunting, either through your own experience or in the industry, that you guys set out to solve in making tree saddles a little bit more mainstream?
So the number one problem, that's a great question, JD, and I completely agree with you. Anything in business is about solving problems. If you can solve someone's problems, whether it be bad skin or big fat bellies or crappy gear or a better car and cheaper gas mileage, better gas mileage, if you can solve that problem, you will win in business. I've learned that. The problem I wanted to solve, it's really one problem. I believe in a concept in hunting of first sit, best sit. I believe that the fewer intrusions you have into a big deer's bedroom, the more likely you are to kill him. It's not my idea. I didn't come up with that. Lots of people have taught that for years and years and years. But I believed it. I really did. And the problem was, how do you do that with the gear we had back then? You know, there wasn't, now we have really light tree stands. You got to go back almost 10 years. We didn't have any of that really light tree stands. The best option was probably a lone wolf, but you were still talking with your sticks and your stand, you were getting close to 20 pounds.
Yeah.
Even with the lone wolf, aluminum tree stand from 10 years ago. So really lightweight gear didn't exist. The other option was a climber. Well, that's great. A climber is a phenomenal tool in certain situations. I hunted out of climbers my entire life. And here where I live in Savannah with our yellow pines, like the climber's a pretty dang good option because there's lots of straight, tall trees. You still have to deal with the noise of setting it up and the bark and stuff. So there's trade-offs, but your climbing method is all in one. It's comfortable as crap, most climbers. So it's a trade-off. I don't think they're terribly safe. I know several people who've fallen out of climbers. I know several people who have had them break. I know several people whose the bottom has fallen and they've had to be helped. So I don't find them to be terribly safe. And the other problem with the climber is if you don't live in Georgia where there's lots of yellow pines, then you're in trees like this or with limbs and branches, and it just doesn't really work. And when I started traveling to hunt when I was in my early 20s to different Midwest states with my dad and brother, we encountered that. And it was like, there aren't a lot of tall, straight, limbless trees in the Midwest, in swamp bottoms where you need to be, in thicket. It just, they're typically not there. And so that was a limitation. I didn't like that. And there wasn't really another option. So the problem that I set out to solve was making myself more mobile and with good, safe, quiet equipment. And that's the problem that I think we've solved.
Yeah, certainly. I have this very distinct multiple memories of going to set tree stands, sometimes even the day or two before rifle season in Wisconsin with my dad. And he had like those homemade like plywood with the big spikes on the back and the big, huge chain. And I remember sitting there, even as a 12-year-old, going, yeah, I don't think there's going to be any deer here tomorrow with this racket that we're making, and I mean, that's an extreme example, but you're right that like, I think that's been intuitive to hunters for a while. And I feel like the industry has captured what's been in the back of the imagination of hunters. Like if I could just get in here a little bit, slicker.
Yeah.
The other pain point,
and before you start onto that next one, let me also add in, it doesn't mean there's not a place for ladder stands and ground blinds and tree stands and box blinds. That's not my position at all. I have no problem hunting from any of those tools. But if you are hunting public land or you're traveling or you're in an area where you can't leave stuff up, there are lots of scenarios that hunters encounter where those types of traditional equipment don't really fit the bill and you need something mobile. And when you need something mobile, I think that's where our gear really shines. So I don't want to come across like I'm dogging all the other stuff because I'm not. It's just, I think the saddle is it's another tool in the toolkit, right? It's like
for sure.
Golfer carries more than one club. He doesn't use the driver every single swing. He breaks out the sand wedge when he needs the wedge. So that's how I think about it, and that's how I think hunters should think about it. Think about it as a tool in your toolkit.
100%. I hunt this property pretty consistently that literally doesn't have trees. So I shot that one from the ground just up against some bushes. So it's just, you're right. It's expanding the clubs in your bag, if you will. And it's a good one. So, you guys have, broke into saddle hunting, led the way, but also I feel like it's opened up this new vista of that segment of gear and added little iterations to it. And I think now it's at the point where I get questions now from friends because we've been doing this podcast. And luckily we're building an AI where I can just like send them that and say, ask the AI the question instead of sending me a question. But I probably in the last 4 months have gotten 3 questions on saddles, like which one should I buy? So now we're not at a place where it's like, oh, there's a saddle that I can buy. There are multiple saddles, multiple different ways of going about it. And I think guys have texted me who've perused the websites, yours and competitors, and going like, do I go John Eberhart and just do the straps? Do I go for this kit that already has sewn in like what? So I want to ask on their behalf, like, how would you guide someone who's like, all right, I'm getting into this, I'm adding it to my tool belt. How do I know which direction to go here?
It's a great question. It's $1 million question because you're right. There are a lot of options and they're all good. You know, the cool thing about it is when we started, there were no options. Like there was one company that was an arborist company that was selling hunting saddles. That was it. Or you could do like I did. You could make your own. I did that for years. You could go buy old ones on Craigslist. You could, if you were real enterprising and you had sewing capabilities, you could go find something and modify it. There were no options. And so we launched in 2018 and you just described it beautifully. It's now there's tons of options. It's almost like analysis by paralysis by analysis, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's a fair question. The short answer is most of this stuff is really good. Like most of it's really good. You're going to be comfortable in a lot of it. You're going to kill deer and you're going to kill deer in them. It's like, you don't need to get too bent over the barrel over that. Find kind of the brand and that resonates with you and, you know, get plugged in. And, what I would say that helps a lot is if you're listening, watching and you're new, I would really advise you to try it. You reach out to your hunt buddy that has one, go to a local retailer, brick and mortar store that has one, try it out, see what you think. Learn the ropes, as it were, at the ground level, you know, and figure it out. But, you know, we make awesome gear. I'm biased, but I think it's the best. But we make great gear. Other brands make great gear. I would encourage anyone listening to get out there and try it. Even if it's not my brand, that's okay, because I think you're going to be better hunter, more efficient hunter, and you're going to have more fun. That is something that is often overlooked in saddle hunting. When you're hunting from traditional tree stand, you're just like a passive observer, right? You're just sitting there on this cold metal sand. And when you're saddle hunting, you are engaged in the hunt from start to finish. Like you're trying to be quiet. You're thinking about your access. You're thinking about where the limbs are and where your shooting lanes are going to be when you're hunting mobile, that is. And you're trying to be quiet and you're trying to get in the right spot. And then during the hunt, you know, you're staying engaged and with the tree and you're hiding behind the tree to use it for your advantage. It's a way more fun way to hunt. And I have people tell me that all the time about, you know, man, it's so much fun to be there. And the downside of that is sometimes you can have too much fun and you can start moving around a lot. So you have to be careful with that as well. But it's really fun. And I'm rambling a little bit now as far as the question that you asked, but I really believe that there's so many good options out there now. Like find one that works for you. I will say this. Make sure that company, whoever you're buying from, is a real business. You're putting your...
Is there some I'm just shady stuff out there?
In generalities, right? Yeah. You are literally putting your life in that equipment manufacturer's hand. Okay?
Seriously.
And you want them to be a real company that pays attention to safety and they care about that stuff. If you get hurt and you have purchased a saddle from some fly-by-night company selling them on eBay, you're hosed, man. You're going to be stuck with these medical bills and it's not good. So that would be the safety guy in me coming out. would be do your research, make sure you trust the company that you're working with. And I'm not saying anyone in particular is you shouldn't trust. I'm saying whoever you decide to go with, whether you go with me, some other brand, make sure you know what you're getting and make sure you are completely confident that that company has your back, because it is important.
Glad you mentioned that. Yeah. One of the questions that I get often is big fellas or big gals kind of look at it and be like, yeah, I don't think so. But then I think they're missing out. So how do you respond to that common question if someone's a little bigger in thinking about tree saddles?
I understand it. I mean, it could be really intimidating. If you're a bigger dude, let's say 250 plus, I could see that, man. You're looking at this piece of fabric and webbing and straps and these tiny little ropes that we sell, and you're going, man, I don't know about that. I'm used to that big Bertha tree stand. Like, I get it. It's fair. I know some fellas that are pretty big dudes that have absolutely no issues being a mobile hunter and hunting out of saddle, hunting gear. I'm talking, flirting with the weight limits on our stuff. The lawyers make us put a 300-pound weight limit on it, and there are people I know that do that. We've worked with some professional wrestlers that in WWE and WWF who use our gear, and they're big boys.
Dang. Oh yeah.
And they love it. So it's
That's
totally awesome. It's totally doable. You just gotta be willing to commit to learning. You have to be willing to spend 20 minutes in the backyard or at your local public land where you can get in a tree and practice at ground level and learn your system. And if you're willing to do that, if you're willing to put just a little bit of effort into a little bit of preparation, right? They say an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? So if you're willing to put in just that little bit of prevention into your mobile hunting setup, you can do it. You can do it. You can totally do it. You can be comfortable. You can be effective. And it can increase your success rate, in my opinion.
Yeah. What about comfort? I think when I was showing my relatives, I was the first kind of in our hunting crew to jump into it. And they're like, how in the world are you going to stay up in the tree in that thing? I'm like, and then I sat with my dad for all day sit in rifle season. He's like, oh, okay, I get it now. But how do you respond to that? And then as someone's buying the gear or getting into it, are there additional things that are going to go a long way if they're like, how do I do a rut sit in this thing?
Yeah, it's a great question. That might be the number one question that I've been asked over the years. There's a few that get asked constantly, like, is that thing comfortable? What do I do with my feet? How do I climb? Right. And can you shoot out of that thing? Those are kind of like the four questions that I get pretty frequently, and sometimes they come at it from a different angle, but it's really one of those four questions as a general rule. So when we were prototyping our Phantom saddle, which in my opinion is the saddle that kind of revolutionized ultralight hunting, I was prototyping it, testing it in 2019 before we launched it to the world in 2020. And the very first hunt I did out of that saddle was daylight to dark sit in Montana over a water hole trying to shoot an elk. And I sat from daylight to dark out of prototype piece of gear. And was I uncomfortable at times? Of course. Go sit in a tree stand for all day. Tell me how your knees feel and how your lower back feel. I've done it. It's not fun. I don't care what you do. I don't care how comfortable, unless you're in a box blind where you got an office chair and a heater and you can stand up and stretch. I mean, sitting all day sucks. It's hard. It's work. There's no cure for that. It's effort. There are things that you can do to make it better. Like you can buy little accessories like protection for your knees and back bands. And, you can stand up and turn around and kind of modify your position throughout the hunt. But an all day sit is it's tough. And I don't think it's fair to judge a piece of equipment off of the most extreme way in which it can be used, right? Like most guys don't ever do all day sits. Most guys, they don't. I did one all day sit this past season, and I'm I hunt a lot. and I did one.
Yeah.
So it's not really that big of a concern. You know, most guys are hunting 2 to 4 hours. That's it. That's most guys. And 99.9% of their hunts are 2 to 4 hours. It's a quick afternoon hunt after work, a long morning, or, you know, we get our rutcation and we kind of hunt the whole week. And typically guys move midday, typically, not always, but typically. And it's just not a real concern for me anymore. Over the years, I've developed my system to a point where I have zero comfort issues. Now there is one caveat to that. It's a thing that I've always called saddle shape for years. Those first few hunts of the year, September, October, you know, depending on when your season comes in, like, you know, those first few hunts they can kind of be uncomfortable sometimes as you're getting your lower back and your butt and your legs and, you know, your core kind of used to that position again. And I call that getting in saddle shape. You know, it takes a few hunts to kind of work the kinks out, but at the same time,
it's kind of like pulling the bike out for the season. At least I live in Minnesota, so I don't ride bikes all year round. But in Minnesota, when the thaw happens, we bust the bikes out. It's like, ooh, that first was a little uncomfortable. Same deal.
Same exact thing. So, you know, knowing that going into it, that, hey, I might be a little uncomfortable the first few hunts while I figure this thing out. It's normal. You shouldn't be afraid of it. You shouldn't get done with your first saddle hunt and your back hurts a little bit and go, oh, this thing sucks. Greg lied. No, you just need to get used to it.
Right. Yeah. Where's this all heading? I mean, I know you've been running the shows or being at different shows, and you guys have come up with a couple products, but it certainly has been, you could call it an innovation in the hunting industry. But where do you think the faster, lighter, safer is moving in the industry? What are you guys thinking about when you are focused on delivering that to customers?
That's a great question. It's something I think about frequently. And where do you go? I mean, everything is so light now. I mean, you can go into the wood. I go into the woods, you know, not in counting like backpacks and accessories and stuff like that, but with my hunting equipment, my saddle, my ropes, my sticks. I mean, I'm less than 10 pounds. Mm-hmm. And it's like, how do you beat that? Well, we will. That's one thing I know about America is we will beat it, eventually, sure. But it feels to me like things have been iterative the last few years, and kind of in general. I think a good example might be like the compound bow industry, right? Like Matthews and Hoyt and Bowtech and those guys. It feels a little iterative, like there haven't been any quantum leaps in several years. I think the real ultralight kind of world is maybe in that zone right now, where stuff is pretty dang good and it's kind of iterative. And we've got some stuff we're working on that's pretty exciting, and that will be coming out over the next 2 years. That's something cool about us, is that we've really kind of matured as a brand, and our product planning has really grown by leaps and bounds. I mean, we used to go to Minnesota, actually. That's where our original headquarters was, in Jordan, there just south of the cities.
That's cool.
We used to meet up there and have these things called tallywags. We called them the Totally Terrific Tethrd tallywags. And we would all show up there as a big group, 10 or 15 of us, and we would go shoot bows and drink too much and talk a lot of crap and sit around and come up with product ideas. And then like they would turn into products like within weeks, months. Dang. Wow. And that was fun. But as you get bigger and you have a bigger team, and it gets harder to do that. But I'm pretty excited about the stuff that's coming out of the pipeline. And we've had a pretty cool year. Like this saber saw that we came out with this year at ATA that won best new accessory. That thing is pretty dang cool. It's not really a saddle hunting item. Yeah. It's a mobile hunting item, right? Like everybody needs a saw. We all carry one, or pruners or something. Everybody carries one. And to be able to take that saw and turn it into a pole saw is pretty dang cool. So that's a cool little innovative thing that's come out. But I haven't seen like these big crazy leaps and bounds like it was the first few years. Call it from 2018 when we launched to 2021 when we were really hitting our stride, and we came out with like the one sticks, the lightest sticks that were ever made. And so I don't know, maybe that's a non-answer. I'm not trying to give it. I'm not trying to give a
fair.
non-answer, but I do feel like maybe we're in a little zone of iteration.
Yeah. That's good. Can you talk a little bit about these? We had John on plugging these. These are only available on your site right now.
Yep.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the process of this? And then I would love to hear the story of this guy. I've already read it, but I think it's a fantastic story. So
I love telling that story, man.
Yeah.
I love that story. It's so cool. So the book. So first of all, John Eberhart is the captain of that book. There is no question about it. I helped him. I played a role. He was generous and gracious enough to give me a co-author credit, but that is 50 years of John's experience rolled into 3 volumes. And it is insane how much information is in there. And
it's packed, man.
that guy is a killer. He is serious. He loves helping hunters. Like, it is his passion in life. And those books are chock full of good information. And super proud that John reached out to me and allowed me to be a part of that. And it was a hard process. It was a fun process. And I'm glad it's over. It was a lot of work. It's more for John than me, but it was really cool. But those books are freaking sweet, and that they're worth it. It's a 3-volume set. It's like $70, I think, for the set.
Yep.
And I'm telling you guys, it is everything you want to know about deer hunting is
right here, man.
One of those books, man. They're in there.
Yep.
John poured his soul into those books.
Super comprehensive. Yeah.
Yes. So the story about that deer, that's the biggest deer I ever killed. I shot that with my bow on a free permission property in Indiana. It was actually on the state line of Indiana and Ohio. I was hunting this property right here, and if it had run across the road, it would have run into Ohio. 5-acre piece of timber. It was a tiny little spot surrounded by cornfields, and it was a knock-on-door permission property. My brother and I were up there hunting in Indiana that we got permission to hunt it. We walked in, like, we got permission. We walked into the front corner of the woods where we were allowed to hunt. Not 20 yards. I mean, it was like right inside. And we walked into the biggest scrape I had ever seen in my life. I mean, it was the size of a truck hood. It was dug down freaking 8 inches. I mean, it was hammered. It's what John would call, a big community scrape in the book, right? And my brother, he's younger than me. He said, this is my spot. So he found a few trails that converged on that spot, and he set up right there in his climber. And so I went around to the other side of the property. This was before Onyx. This was before like mapping and stuff. So it's not like you could just find the right spot, the topo lines on your phone. It was before all that. So I just went to the back side of the property and started walking the back line that kind of bordered the cornfield. And I didn't know where I was going, and it was only 5 acres, so I couldn't get that far away from my brother. We just figured if there's a buck that comes through here, like, one of us is going to get shot at. And so I start walking down the property line, and I come to this. It was really steep, like rappel steep, like a cliff. And so I'm walking down this cliff, looking down, going like, man, there's no way a deer could come up that. I mean, it was literally impossible. You'd need ropes to get down it. And then it levels out, and it goes into this little, this trench, and it comes back up, and then it goes right back to cliff. And that funnel, that pinch point led right into the cornfield. I mean, it was like the yellow brick road for Dorothy, right? I saw it, and I said, if there's a deer in the cornfield and he wants to come into this woodlot, he has to come up that cut. There was no other way. So it was kind of a no-brainer spot, really. It was like easy. So I picked a spot where it was probably 35 yards wide, this cut. So I kind of got right in the middle of it. And I don't even think I paid attention to the wind. I don't think I thought of any of that. I think it was so simple that it was just such a no brainer that, I mean, what else was I going to do? So I climbed this tree and we're waiting. And then this little buck starts pushing this doe around, and he's running back and forth between me and my brother. And we were texting. And I was like, oh, I saw a buck. It was 9-point. He's like, oh yeah, I saw that buck. Great little 9-point, like 115-inch little 9-point.
Yes.
Not anything we were interested in shooting at that point in time. And he's pushing this doe. He's running her all over the woods. I'm talking back and forth, me and Bobby, up and down. He's making all kind of noise in the leaves. And so we're sitting there watching it. Then it starts to rain. It's like 38 degrees, 35 degrees and raining. I didn't have any rain gear. I'm sitting in my climber. And I texted my brother. I said, dude, it's maybe an hour before dark. Like, it's getting good time. And I was being a little baby. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I was being a little baby. I was cold. I was wet. We hadn't seen anything else. Yeah. And I texted Bobby and I said, dude, I'm getting down. I'm cold. I'm wet. We'll come back another time. And he said, quit being a baby and just stick it out. And I said, okay. And it probably wasn't 10 minutes later that I heard footsteps coming up the ravine, and I looked down and it was giant 160-inch typical 12-point. And I'd never seen a deer like that in my life, being from the Southeast. Florida, growing up in Florida, we don't have 250-pound giant, huge deer. And this dude came walking up like a freaking man. When those big mature bucks and they take those hard, heavy steps, and he's like swaying his chest and showing that he's the dominant guy. Well, what he was doing is he was coming up to kick that little 9-pointer's ass. That's what he was doing. He was coming up there to beat him up. And he came up there like this, just strutting his stuff. He walked right past me, and I shot him with a Rage broadhead at 12 yards. Perfect shot. He ran maybe 40 yards and died. And it was like elation. It was the coolest hunt ever.
And immediately you were not cold.
Immediately I was not cold. And then I texted Bobby and I said, Bobby, I just shot a giant. And he was like, dude, shut up. You didn't shoot that 9-point, did you? I was like, no, he's a giant. He didn't believe me. He thought I'd shot that little buck. And so we got down and came down, and we walked the blood trail. We walked right to the deer, and there he was. And our jaws just dropped. We're a couple of Florida boys. We've never seen a deer like that. And we were like, what the heck is that thing? It was awesome. That's awesome. Amazing. Yeah, it's a great story. I'll never forget it. I can remember it. As I'm telling you, I can remember it like it was yesterday.
It's so cool. It's such a cool part of hunting, how our awareness gets so heightened in those moments, and it just cements every detail in our brain. It's pretty wild. Dude, Greg, thank you so much. This has been awesome. Thank you for being generous with your time, giving us the inside perspective of what you've lived and breathed and been passionate about for a long time. So we're excited for what comes next for Tethrd, and for you. We'll be watching. If people for some reason don't know how to connect with not only Tethrd, but what you put out hunting wise, where can they find you?
Yeah, we're fairly easy to find. Tethrd.com, Tethrd, Tethrd. I thought it was a good idea to spell it weird. And now when I've explained that over the years, when giving people my email address, Greg at Tethrd, it's like, yeah, maybe it wasn't such a good idea to misspell it. But you can find us. We spelled it wrong on purpose, Tethrd.com. And you can find us pretty much anywhere on YouTube. That's one of the places I would recommend starting if you're a new hunter, a new saddle hunter, and you're trying to learn the ropes. I started our YouTube channel, Tethrd.com or Tethrd YouTube. There's lots of content out there on YouTube now. You can learn everything you want to know. Podcasts like you guys are doing are super helpful as well. But there's something about the video aspect of like an educational video on YouTube that's super useful. So that would probably be where I'd recommend.
We just had Garrett Prawl on, who's on your team, who's just got fantastic stuff. That's where I learned a ton. So he'd probably be my first. And John's got some great stuff too.
And I've got a ton of old content, DIY content on my personal channel. I haven't put out content in a really long time, and I'd actually like to start doing it again. But my YouTube channel is G2 Outdoors, and I've got a ton of content on there about how to make stuff and splicing ropes and all kind of fun stuff, camera mount, all kind of fun stuff like that.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Greg. Appreciate you being here, man.
Hey there. Thanks for watching this video. I'm JD, founder and crew member of the Huntxp team. We're so grateful that you took time to watch this video, and hopefully it's helping you level up your hunting game. That's what we in our community is all about, and we want to invite you into this growing community of hunters that's all about leveling up each other's hunting game. So the first thing you can do is like and subscribe, but even more than that, we got some fun things going on over at our website, Huntxp.com. We'd love for you to join our community there and stay connected with what we're doing, what we're working on, and we'd love to hear about what you're after. So thank you for watching this video. We'll see you next time.